my mentor, my group mentor, Maestro Pica. God bless his heart, for he has passed on not that long ago. So this toca, this flauta, is not only for the celebration of Sociedad Juarez, but also to give a bit of a shout out to my maestro. For if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here. We all wouldn't be here if it weren't for inspiration from him. Shout out to my maestro. And this toca se llama Indian Trails. The song that I'm going to play is called Indian Trails. Again, yo soy Calif,
Amor Bueno, sí, buen día, buen día, buen día. Bienvenidos a todos. Yo soy Octavio Barajas, soy presidente de la Sociedad Juárez y les agradezco a todos los que están presentes, los que están aquí viéndonos por el YouTube. Muchas gracias por su apoyo. Y también les agradezco los que van a ver este video más adelante. Este video se está grabando, los que están presentes. Me gustaría darle la bienvenida a todos. Hoy estamos reunidos para celebrar 110 años de la Sociedad Juárez. 110 años es muy fácil decirlo, pero esta organización tiene 110 años que se cumplieron el día 25 de diciembre. Y entonces estamos en este momento grabándola con precauciones por el virus. Aquí estamos con las máscaras y estamos así tomando un tiempo para hacer un evento especial porque es algo que merece celebrar. Entonces esto es una cosa que lo estamos abriendo con Jubilí, aquí tomando la danza azteca, mexica. Le agradecemos mucho su participación, algo que merece con el rezo que aportaron. Les agradezco mucho al Calif, de Cuantitla, Tlazocamati, como aprendieron, esa es una palabra en el idioma indígena, mexicano, quiere decir gracias. Entonces le damos gracias. También al Prieto que nos cantó una bonita canción. Vamos a continuar, les voy a pasar el micrófono ahorita al momento a uno de los miembros que ya tiene bastante tiempo con la organización Sociedad Juárez, el señor Jesús Acosta. Va a pasar ahorita al momento para darle pues un mensaje sobre la Sociedad Juárez. Y después de que él pasa a hablar y compartir sus recuerdos, vamos a tener más canciones de Prieto que nos va a aquí poner bien alegres con estas canciones. And so I just want to briefly say, and now in English, for those of you who may not be fluent in Spanish, we are actually very happy to welcome you to our celebration of 110 years. This organization has been around for 110 years. La Sociedad Juárez, here in Bakersfield, California, on East 18th Street. You know the spot. I'm sure many of you have a lot of memories here. We've been around for a long time. So we're actually had the opening with the prayers and blessings from Calif, an Aztec dance group.
Como yo llegué en el 57, aquí en Bakersfield, y tú te ponías bien. Bueno, los bailes aquí se llenaban, había como 200 personas, que habían todos parados, porque no podían sentarnos, pero tenían artistas de todas clases, ¿no? Por eso es los únicos recuerdos que tengo yo de ir del Salón Juárez. Era todo lo que tenía yo que decir. Bueno, muchas gracias por estarnos mirando, oyéndonos. Y esto,
Muchas gracias, señor Jesús Acosta. Se agradece mucho su esfuerzo, lo que aporta a la Sociedad Juárez. Como les comenté, es un miembro muy importante en sus contribuciones que ya son de años, como un presidente pasado de la Sociedad Juárez. So I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Acosta, for expressing yourself and sharing your time and contributing to this organization as a past president and also as a current board member of La Sociedad Juárez. And thank you all who continue to watch. Please hit the subscribe button on the YouTube, and we can actually have more subscribers, and you can keep in touch with future events that we'll be having live through our YouTube channel. So thank you again for those who watch and subscribe, and we will have another hour of this program. So if you want to tell a friend, share with them the link so they can join you in viewing this celebration. Thank you. And next we will have El Prieto with another song.
Felicidades a la Sociedad Juárez en su 110 aniversario. Felicidades a la Sociedad Juárez en su 110 aniversario.
Toda mañana en que que ya amaneció.
Muchísimas felicidades a toda la Sociedad Juárez, Balón Juárez. Un fuerte aplauso, por favor, de los presentes para la Sociedad Juárez, que hoy está en su 110 aniversario.
Quisiera ser un San Juan, quisiera ser un San Pedro, a venirte a saludar con la música del cielo, de las estrellas del cielo, quisiera bajarte una para saludarte y otra para decirte adiós. Con jazmines y flores este día voy a adornar. Hoy por ser 110 aniversario te venimos a cantar.
Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, vamos a continuar con algo del servidor. Y felicidades a la organización Juárez.
Mis mejores amigos vagué por el norte buscando ese algo, ese no sé qué. Y por mala suerte o por cosas que pasan, lo digo muy triste, siempre tendrá que hacer. Cuando era joven, salí de mi pueblo, buscando la gloria, me fui a navegar. Y hoy que estoy de vuelta, cansado y muy triste, aunque yo no quiera, me pongo a pensar que mis mejores años los dejé tirados por esos caminos de pena y dolor. Que mis mejores años, mis años bonitos, los tiré a lo tonto, solo y sin amor. Cuando yo me muera, no me lleven flores, llévenme un mariachi que sepa tocar. Y en mi tumba escriban con letras sencillas: aquí descansa el hombre que nació en San Julián. Cuando pase el tiempo, los meses, los años, que alguien se pregunte por qué me perdí, cuéntenle mi vida a todos sus hijos, díganle a la gente lo tonto que fui. Que mis mejores años los dejé tirados por esos caminos de pena y dolor. mejores años, mis años bonitos, los viví a lo tonto, solo y sin amor. Mis mejores años, por ahí los tiré.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias a la Asociación Juárez. Bueno, pues vamos a dejarlos en compañía.
Bueno, muchas gracias a todos que están escuchando y viendo. Desafortunadamente esta presentación va a ser en inglés. Pero mucho de esto viene de, claro, el Benito Juárez hizo su lugar en fama fue en el 5 de mayo, obviamente la intervención con Francia, pero de ahí llegó el nombre de él cuando muchos se vinieron para Estados Unidos y ese nombre se quedó y fue un nombre que muchos usó. So I'm going to switch over to English now. Like I said, I just want to introduce that part in Spanish just to let people know how this name came to be. But this goes back all the way to 1860s, and when we're talking about the Battle of Puebla, which the name hit. And one of the things that happened here in California, especially in California, one of the largest and first of the Hispanic or Latino wage workers was in the San Jose Alma del Mines. That's where they kind of began. And a lot of them, even though 1860s was the Civil War in the US, what you have is a lot of them are still paying attention to what's going on in Mexico because of course, the intervention, the French intervention, Maximilian in Mexico. So what happens is a lot of them are paying attention to the newspapers, and once they realize that this battle of Puebla, of course, Mexico loses this war per se, but they won that battle of 5 de Mayo. Everybody's familiar with that. So what happens is the newspapers of the time sent news all over the California that they had defeated the French, and there was a celebration, a 5 de Mayo celebration. That's where it starts. It's a Mexican-American tradition. A lot of people forget that. And it starts here in California. And what this does is the people start getting together, and what they do is they put all their funds, all their monies together, and they were sending their money to Mexico, not to the U.S. Remember, the U.S. is still in Civil War. That's the interesting thing about it. But what happens here is that all of a sudden, when these people get together, they became known as juntas patrióticas, or patriotic committees. And these juntas patrióticas, what they would do is they would get together every year on this day, 5 de Mayo, and then have these celebrations. That's sort of the genesis of this movement, the juntas patrióticas, based on 5 de Mayo. And this is also something that was also based in Mexico and other places in Southwest, these juntas patrióticas. So I'm going a little far back just to give you a little background. And this is this painting here, or this picture here, is of one of the very first 5 de Mayo celebrations. But the interesting about this is that now the people here are starting to get together and join these events by throwing celebrations, by putting their monies together, by supporting each other, strength in numbers. That kind of mentality begins here, of course, in California. This, of course, is the Alma del Mines here in the San Jose area of Northern California. So the historical question is these celebrations, of course, where are they going to get together? Remember, this is a time that there's no government welfare system, there's no Social Security, none of that good stuff. So now that the people are leaving the farms and going into cities, including here in Bakersfield, even though Bakersfield's not existing just yet, what is the main reason for these things? And I put a little diagram here, a fundraising for a cause. As this hall is known as the membership raise funds to assist other members. That's one of the main things, raising money for a cause. Nostalgia from home. Many of the people that left Mexico for whatever reason, whether it's the revolution, the Cristero rebellion, or maybe just looking for jobs, the Bracero program, whatever it was, when they came to the United States, of course they felt this longing for home. And of course these halls were important for that. Reminder of younger generations, and we all know this, there's always a generational gap when migrants move, but the younger generation don't know what it's like to live in Mexico, for example, in this case. So the place like this will remind them of that, as we saw today with the danzantes and with the Prieto singing our mariachi songs, to remind the younger generation that are not from Mexico of what it used to be like. Of course, an immersion into American society. This hall, a lot like others, was that sort of that bridge between the old generation and the new generation here in the United States. And lastly, of course, to party, celebrate. Right? It's normal. And this hall here has been doing 110 Christmas parties. And so even though the COVID and even though the situation we have right now does not allow us to throw that celebration like we would like to, we don't want to lose that tradition, which is why we're doing this today. So here in Bakersfield, right before they arrived to this area, a lot of the Mexicans and of course their generations, future generations, were living in an area known as Panama. And you guys are probably familiar with that. Panama Road, Panama Lane, that's where these settlements were at. And you have this article from 1874 that talks about them, the Mexican settlement in Bakersfield. That's where it began. From there, you start to see in the 1880s, after the Civil War, you have this shift between the North and South. Obviously, we know what happens there. But what happens is the North starts to realize that their cotton supply might be taken away by the South through the Civil War. California is the only state that's part of the Union that's below that Mason-Dixon line on the map. Therefore, the weather of Bakersfield is similar to the weather of Alabama, Mississippi in some cases. So where's the best place to grow cotton? Of course, here in Kern County. And if you're familiar with this, if you know the east side of Brundage, you know there's a lot of cotton production back in the day for this reason. So they need the farmland. All of a sudden, the Mexicans that are living in these settlements are being pushed out because they need that new farmland in the south of Bakersfield for that cotton production. So you see this shift of people leaving the farms and into what is now known as La Colonia, the Mexican colony, here in the city of Bakersfield. Here we have the old land grants of Kern County, that goes back to the Mexican era days, and you have Panama, which is in this area right over here. And you can see by this map here how the rivers used to be back then, the Kern River, how it used to branch out. Bakersfield used to be an island. It was surrounded by water up until it was cut off here by the dams and other canals, in which the river now is just very singular. But the point is that this is the area where they were at, the Panama Road, and a shift over to what is now East Bakersfield, La Colonia. What you see here is two maps. When the railroad was coming down, and the railroad was a big push that brought in a lot of Mexicans because of the jobs. But when the railroad was coming into Bakersfield, the city of Bakersfield did not want to play ball with them. The city of Bakersfield did not want to help the railroad. And so what the railroad would do, and this is something that was standard, they would go down the Central Valley, and what they would do is, if a town did not help them or give them what they wanted, they will bypass the town in what is known as spike towns. So when this colonia started to shift over this direction, the railroad is trying to come through Bakersfield. The city of Bakersfield says no to the railroad, and so the road decided to do their own town east of Bakersfield. So this area here on Baker Street, where the train depot was at, that was the original spike town. Right? It was a town created to rival the city of Bakersfield, and in some cases, hopefully it disappeared. And this map here shows the two different towns as they were created. You see the railroad line come through here, avoiding the city of Bakersfield and coming on the east side. If many of you guys may know this or seen this, if you ever cross Union Avenue on East 19th Street, where the Salvation Army's at, all of a sudden it just jerks to the right. Right? It's not straight. This is why. When you come this way, it shoots off to the right because the railroad came that direction. So this is the original spike town. So this is La Colonia is going to be right here, the Mexican land grants, right here. So again, the two towns are rivaling each other, and as people are leaving the farms or losing the farms, they're shifting over to the city, strengthening numbers all over again. The settlements are moving now into this region. It is at this time, in the 1890s, where the First Congregational Church of Bakersfield, this is during the era known as the Progressive Era, and during this era, they're trying to change society in many different ways. And the First Congregational Church of Bakersfield, which was one of the original churches, or not the original, but one of the first, I should say, not the original, one of the first, they want to create missions to help other people. They had a Chinese mission, and now they're looking for a Mexican one. And you can see right here where it says all these missions that they have here. Here's the Panama mission. They're looking for a Mexican one. But what they want is somebody, unlike the Catholic Church, who, when they promoted priests, the Catholic Church only used Italians, or they use Portuguese, or they use Irish. They hardly ever use Mexicans for their Mexican churches. And you'll see that even here in Bakersfield, when the first Catholic Spanish church in Guadalupe, their first priest was not Mexican. I think he was Italian. But what these churches were doing is, these churches were growing, and instead of hiring somebody else, they went and they wanted somebody from within, somebody who knew the culture, somebody who knew Spanish. So This Congregational Church of Bakersfield in 1882, they reached out to find a Protestant Mexican pastor, and they did it with this guy. This is part of, as an historian, we use a lot of primary sources. This is an actual ledger from that church where it says here, Jesus Cruz Nava, 1000 Humboldt Street, Kern. Remember, this is a different town. This is Kern. This is not East Bakersfield. This is Kern City. And if you guys ever notice, if you're ever on Union Avenue going north, you'll see it says Old Town Kern. That's the reference to that. This used to be called Kern. So here is Jesus Cruz Nava, his wife, Celia Nava, here in Humboldt Street. Now you're probably wondering, where is Humboldt Street? Well, if I go back to this previous map, you'll notice that this is a separate town. The east side had different names for all these streets, but when they connected with the city of Bakersfield, they conflicted with each other. So F, G, and H Street are now East 18, East 19, East 21st. So Humboldt was East 21st Street, because they went in alphabetical order. So these streets obviously don't exist anymore, or the names, I should say. So Humboldt Street, Baker Street, Monterey Street. Again, this is where the East Bakersfield, or in this case, Kern City, is developing. So this is Jesus Navas' declaration of intention. This is his papers in which, when he came to United States, they went to Mexico. He was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. He studied under the Congregational Church, under this Porfiriato, that was, of course, supported by, or at least they lauded Juarez. Because Porfirio Diaz was sort of the protege of Benito Juarez. They knew each other. So when Benito Juarez dies, this is where the Porfiriato begins, and you see this rise of Protestant churches in Mexico, and Nava is one of those guys. And here you see Alfred Nava, one of his sons, his declaration of entry of El Paso, Texas. So here we can track the arrival of the Nava family to the east side via this push by the Congregational Church of Bakersfield, and you see by the documents of where they're at. So 1907, he crosses El Paso. In 1908, he's in Venice. Here is J.C. Nava, right? Celebrating the 110th, anniversary of independence of Mexico. This is 2 years prior arriving to Bakersfield, obviously. So we can track him as he's being brought over here. By 1910, he's here in Bakersfield, J.C. Nava. And Nava, of course, arrives, being an educated person. One of the things he wants to do is start the first Spanish newspaper. Because remember, the missions, their job is to hire this guy to come to Bakersfield and promote the church for them, obviously. So, when he arrives, the first thing he wants to do is start a newspaper so that people are informed of what's going on in Mexico, what's going on here in the U.S. And he does that. The first newspaper, known as El Centenario, which became the very first Spanish newspaper here in Bakersfield. August 14, again, that Porfirio Diaz connection again, we talked about. That connection with Juarez and Porfirio Diaz, and J.C. Nava, again, here, right, pushes for this new club, this Porfirio Diaz club. And they're going to celebrate, of course, if you know the date, 1910, that's a 100-year anniversary of Mexican independence, 1810. By 1909, as I mentioned, before the creation of the hall is the very first Christmas party. Again, going back to this hall and the 100th anniversary of Christmas parties, you see that it's the Mexican population. They're going to have a special Christmas event. Once they have this event, they realize we need a place to hold these events, because they had to use other places in the city, and sometimes they weren't wanted. Remember, this is still nativism. There's a lot of Jim Crow segregation going on. So they realize we need to have our own spot, and this is where the idea comes up, to have these celebrations, but where are we going to do it at? Finally, 1910, Juarez Mutualista Society begins. So this is where J.C. Nava, again, one of the main speakers, J.C. Nava, all over here again, right? And they first do it at what is known as the Armory Hall, before the creation of this place. And the Armory Hall is now located East 19 and Union, kind of where the Salvation Army is at right now. Not Salvation Army, the Goodwill, sorry. The Salvation Army? Goodwill. Salvation Army, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I get those two confused. All right, so this is what's going on here. Celebrations all over again, the Mutualista Society, 1910, and this is where it begins, like as I mentioned. Going back to the Mexican independence, this is J.C. Nava here. All right, that's him. Of course, this is the following year. So now it's 101st anniversary. Remember, this hall, as mentioned by one of our members, didn't begin until the 1930s, but the creation of the society begins here. 1912, again, more celebrations. And again, more Christmas parties. Christmas party was always a key thing. And one of the main things that J.C. Nava was trying to do, at least with the beginning members, is to have a place where they can meet. And this place here, again, it wasn't there in 1912, but the origins and the need for a location begins. And here we see some of the original members, Reese, Valdivias, Nava, of course, Garcias, some of the original members of this society. There was a shift in the 1920s because, of course, there's the depression in the 1930s. So a lot of people lose a lot of stuff. There's a lot of Mexican, what is known as Mexican repatriation. A lot of people are deported. So there's a sort of a slowdown of the society. But with the arrival of Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, you see the society emerge all over again. When now the church is here in the 1930s, you see a lot of the Mexican residents in the city observe. But now there's no more connection with the Congregational Church of Bakersfield. There's no more connection with the Protestants. Now it's a Catholic thing. So they lose that Porfirio Diaz label, they lose all that, but they still kept the Juarez name. That remained the same. And of course, this, as I mentioned, this place was also a bridge, and they would bring in immigration inspectors, and they would bring in the Kern County sheriffs at a time when people did not like them, at a time when, of course, there was issues with the community. But this place was seen as a bipartisan location in which they can talk to the government officials back and forth. So this location was that. 48, again, more celebrations and ceremonies. But now this is the connection with the Honorifica Mexicana that used to be huge here at Bakersfield. They still exist in other places, but not as strong as these back in the days. More Cinco de Mayo, right, 1950s. Again, the Comisión Honorífica, that's the connection now. And 1964, again, the Comisión Honorífica. So the society here, went through many stages. It started with a connection with the Protestant Congregational Church of Bakersfield. Then it shifted over to the 1920s with the fall of the Porfirio Diaz and the connection. People kind of like had a little pushback. 1920 depression, there was a sort of a downsurge in membership. But 1930s, with Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, started in 1925, there was a reconnection, and they started going back up again, up until the 1950s, which we know was another repatriation era. And so by then, you have the Mexican Honorifica Society, the commission, which is linked to the Mexican government. It's sort of this connection. So obviously, it goes in through different eras. And nowadays, we don't have that connection anymore. Now it's almost a standalone here in the society, in the community. So this is where we're at now. So it's very important to remember, I'll go back there. Important to remember that the society here has always been that location where the community can always come in. Of course, now the city has grown exponentially, so and the need is not the same as before. Remember, now we have, workman's comp and that kind of stuff. Back in the day, they didn't have that. So this is what happens. This is a mechanism, a survival mechanism, in which the community used strength in numbers in order to defend itself against society. Right, going back to the whole community role. And so we're hoping that with support from the communities, we can go back to the days, these heydays of the society being a great place for everybody to join us. And even though right now, like I said, we're doing that pandemic, we don't want to lose that tradition of the 110th anniversary of the Juarez. So thank you for your time.
Question.
Yes.
Who are the founders or founder of the society?
He was not, him and other leaders became the founders. Yeah, he was like the second president. The first president, I believe, was Reese.
Awesome presentation. Muchas gracias, Profesor Llamas, por esa presentación histórica. We appreciate all your viewers, and next we would like to transition with El Prieto. Prieto has another song that he will share with us. And Without further ado, Prieto, adelante.
Tenemos el caballo que mi tía más estimaba. Cuando ya silban los trenes, se paraba y relincheaba 7 leguas del caballo que mi tía más estimaba. En la estación de Irapuato cantaban los horizontes. Ay, compatio formal, la brigada Bracamontes en la estación de Irapuato cantaban los horizontes. Oye tú, Francisco Villa, ¿qué dice tu corazón? Ya no te acuerdas, valiente, que atacaste paredón. Ya no te acuerdas, valiente, que tomaste a Torreón. Como a las 3 de la tarde silbó la locomotora. Arriba, arriba, muchachos, pongan la ametralladora. Como a las 3 de la tarde silbó la locomotora. Adiós Torres de Chihuahua, adiós Torres de Cantera. Ya vino Francisco Villa a quitarles lo pantera. Ya llegó Francisco Villa a devolver la frontera.
Muchísimas gracias. Algo de la historia, los corridos, algo de la historia de México. Bueno, una canción del señor José Alfredo Jiménez, de los mejores compositores de México. Y felicidades a la organización Juarez por su 110 aniversario.
Yo sé bien que estoy afuera, pero el día en que yo me muera, sé que tendrás que llorar. Dirás que no me quisiste, pero vas a estar muy triste y así te vas a quedar. Con dinero y sin dinero, yo hago siempre lo que quiero y mi palabra es valer. No tengo trono ni reina, ni nadie quien me comprenda, pero sigo siendo el rey.
algo muy bonito. Escuchen la letra de esta canción. Yo nací sin fortuna, sin nada,
Desafiando al destino de frente, hasta el más infeliz me humillaba, ignorándome toda la gente, y de pronto mi suerte ha cambiado, y de pronto me viene gran gente.
y esa gente fingirse dichosa
Frente a un mundo vulgar y embustero, gente hipócrita, ruin, vanidosa, que de nada le sirve el dinero, que se muere lo mismo que el poder. Y su tumba es el mismo agujero. Ahora voy por distintos caminos, voy siguiendo tan solo el destino, y entre pobres me siento dichoso, si es amado doy mi amor entero. Por los pobres me quito el sombrero, y desprecio hasta el más poderoso. Soy cabal y sincero les digo, he labrado mi propio destino. Yo le tiendo la mano al amigo, pero al rico jamás me humilló.
yo nunca tuve el calor de un beso. Mis pobres viejos trabajaban tanto que nunca tuvieron tiempo para eso. Y así crecí sin ignorar el llanto. Yo no fui a la escuela, yo aprendí de grande. Para esas cosas no alcanza un pobre. Las letras no entran cuando se tiene hambre. Ni hay quien te dé la mano si eres pobre. Por eso es que vuelvo a este pueblo viejo, donde la vida me trató tan mal. Esta es mi gente que por nada dejo, a mi linda gente de mi San Julián.
Soy cabal y sincero les digo, he labrado mi propio destino. Yo le tiendo la mano al amigo, pero al rico jamás me humilló.
Muchísimas gracias. Bueno, algo del señor Juan Gabriel, un genio musical. Créanlo, en la ciudad de Juárez. Algo.
Probablemente ya de mí te has olvidado, y mientras tanto yo te seguiré esperando. No me he querido ir para ver si algún día que tú quieras volver me encuentres todavía. Por eso aún estoy en el lugar de siempre, en la misma ciudad y con la misma gente, para que tú al volver no encuentres nada extraño y sea como ayer, y nunca más dejarnos. Probablemente estoy pidiendo demasiado, se me olvidaba que ya habíamos terminado, que nunca volveré. ciudad y con la misma gente para que tú al volver no encuentres nada extraño y sea como ayer y nunca más dejarnos. Probablemente estoy viviendo demasiado, se me olvidaba que ya habíamos terminado, que nunca volverás, que nunca me quisiste, se me olvidó otra vez, que solo yo te quise.
Muchísimas gracias.
¿Quién presta su micrófono, por favor?
Perfecto, muchas gracias, Prieto. How about that, everyone? What an awesome mess, canciones, those beautiful songs. ¿Se puede arreglar el eco? Por favor. Just a quick second. There's an echo on the microphone. Just wanted to clear that. And so, well, no se pongan tristes. We're coming to the end of our event. This is towards the end of the event. And I have the honor just to give a couple of closing statements. And I just wanted to say some words of appreciation and gratitude. I mean, despite all the challenges that we've had this year with COVID, we've been able to really come together and create community this year. And so, as you heard from Professor Llamas' talk, this organization has a lot of history. And also wanted to say that this organization outlived the flu of 1918, the flu of 1919. And so I wanted to state that we outlived that flu, and with the grace of God, we will surpass COVID-19 as well in 2021. And so, just with these words of appreciation, I wanted to appreciate everyone who here is physically here with us to make this event possible today. And so, with the danzantes, that was awesome. Thank you for those blessings. El Prieto con su bonita voz en sus canciones que nos está animando este día. Profesor Llamas, and also Donato Cruz, who is our man of the day, who's doing this live stream. We really appreciate you, brother. Straight out of Cal State Bakersfield, here giving us some support today. So we really appreciate your support. I mean, with that, we really appreciate your support. So, it's just Donato Cruz, but he just happens to work at Cal State Bakersfield. So this is on his own time, out of his own time. So we really appreciate you supporting. And also, Señor Acosta, you've heard from him earlier. And so we are doing this event again to, just make sure that this community here that was initiated 110 years ago, we are doing a lot here to keep this moving forward. We look forward to your participation in the future. We've done numerous fundraisers, and we will continue with the next year, having more fundraisers, having more events to the extent that's possible with COVID. And so we actually have meetings. We can't meet right now, but we do collect member dues on the fourth Sunday. Every fourth Sunday from around the hours of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we have our secretary and our treasurer here who collect those membership dues. And so you can come here physically to our physical location, which is 1815 East 18th Street. And you can come here starting the fourth Sunday of the new year. And for those members who want to become new members, who want to be of support, you can do that. You can come here also the fourth Sunday. And so that's a possibility as well. And it's $10 for new members each month. That is our membership due. The benefits is also discount rates for the salon when it becomes available. and also to be a part of the planning of events that we have to the community, be part of the meetings when we're actually able to hold them, and also a benefit of $2,000 on the time of your death. And so those are the kinds of things that we have off as benefits for our members. And so I just wanted to mention that as well, because that's really important. And so I think it's really important that we continue to hold community. Remember that because of Jim Crow, because of segregation, the Mexican community was not welcomed everywhere in Bakersfield. You know, so this was a reality of our creation, our foundation. And it was the original Mexican families here in Bakersfield that actually established this organization for our benefit, for us to actually hold community. So that's very significant that they had that vision that time ago to get this started for that purpose. And so we also want to make sure that we also honor that legacy and making sure that this community continues to grow in the future. And it's very significant because sometimes it's almost as if the word Mexican is a bad word, but that's not the case. We know that this is not the case, but at times that's the sentiment that we feel in the community. And so even though from 1910 even to 2020, but we want to say that it is something that our members have expressed pride, that there's dignity in being Mexican. So we have that responsibility that we take forward that started in 1910 to say that we are Mexican, and we say that with respect and on. So we had some technical difficulties, so I just wanted to close with the final comment stating that we know that COVID has been very difficult for many of you, and we acknowledge, that we feel it as an organization, and we've had several members who have passed away this year of COVID, and so in memory of all of our members and for your loved ones as well, we just want to just have a moment to acknowledge their life, and also the challenges that you've had as a family with COVID. I mean, we are here in community and acknowledging that these have been very difficult times. So I would like to ask, please, Jael, if you could come up. We have this estandarte, this banner that we actually hold out in the moment that someone passes away, one of our members. So we would like to raise this banner today in memory of those who passed away. And so we just want to just have a moment of silence. If we could just have just a moment of silence in memory of our members who passed away this year in 2020, and also in memory of your loved ones as well. Thank you. We'll all get past this COVID in 2021. Thank you for your support and viewing, and thank you, Jaed, for your support holding up the banner. So without further ado, we return for El Prieto with the final song. And so El Prieto, muchas gracias. Se agradece mucho su apoyo, su bonita voz que nos está animando esta mañana.
Muchísimas gracias. Y un fuerte aplauso.